our wonderful artist talks. Today's going to be slightly different. It's going to be more of a conversation with our artists, Mary Adelman and Judy Goto, and their friend Doug.
I'm going to start with 30 seconds of a brief bio, like where you were born, where you went to school, and then we'll come back and we'll start a conversation.
Okay.
Judy.
Okay, so I was born in Philadelphia, and in South Philadelphia. I went to Tyler, and Dan was my teacher, we discovered when he came last time. I did printmaking, and I worked for a while, then I got married, had kids, I stopped doing artwork. I moved to Japan and lived there many, many years. And then when I retired, I moved back to Philadelphia and thought I wanted to start working again. And I couldn't do printmaking, but I found collage.
And part of that, which reminds me in listening, is that how much of Judy's art is sort of reflected back. She might have stopped doing art in Japan, but she didn't stop creating art. It kept going.
In my head.
Until you got to the space where you could put it back on the wall. Yeah.
That's probably true.
Mary. You can definitely make yours up, or you want me to make it up for you?
No, I want to do that. Thank you.
Okay, good.
I was born in Peru. I went to school in Mexico, at the University of Mexico, and I've always liked to make things, and I like to be able to bring things into being, and I don't think I really know what I'm bringing in, but I just like to kind of bring it in until it becomes a form that I recognize. And yeah, I don't think I ever took a break.
All right. So Judy, do you want to talk a little bit about the influence from Japan?
Sure. When I lived in the States and I did artwork, I used Arches or Reeves paper. And when I went to Japan, I discovered wonderful papers that were thin and transparent and patterned and textured. And I think that influenced my artwork a lot, the different kinds of paper. And then also the patterns that I saw in Japan, rectangular patterns on the doors, with the paper. But also, I'm reminded of kimono. And I don't know if you know, but kimono is a patterned fabric, and then there's an obi that goes around. And when I first went there, I was very surprised to see that the matching obi was very jarringly different, and they were both patterned, and they looked beautiful together, but it so was not a Western kind of aesthetic. And I remember one time needing to wear a kimono, and I went with my sister-in-law, and we picked out a kimono, and then an obi. I picked out the obi because I thought, well, let me pick up some of the colors from the kimono into it. And, I found it, and she's like, oh, no, that does not match. And so she picked out one that I would never have picked out, but it was beautiful together. And so I think that kind of influenced a lot of my work. Has pattern next to pattern next to pattern.
And as Judy was talking about rectangles, right? Right here, is a rectangle. The corner of the pool is a rectangle. Moving down towards Ken is another corner of a pool, which is a rectangle, which I'll hopefully talk about water in a little while, because it's definitely water and swimming. And then if you look at this wall, it's more oval, and we'll hear some about the oval. And I'm going to go to Mary now. Mary, in the conversations we've had about your ceramics, and the stories that I sort of come up with, right, feel so indigenous.
Yeah, I think it's true about art in general. I don't, you know, maybe one has an idea like, I meant, no, I want a figure, but that's like all I know. And I remember when I was really young, like 5 years old, I used to constantly look through books at people's dress from around the world. And I think that's, you know, what's happening here. And my friend that I've had since 5 years old, we once made a book of dresses, and then we named each dress. And I feel like this is just a continuation of that. So then it's interesting, the Mexican thing and South American indigenous stuff keeps coming up. And like not consciously, but people keep sending me images of that. I think it's just like stuck in there from stuff that I look at. I love to look at early Greek and Roman stuff when I go to a museum, and I usually love to look at African stuff or Mexican or anything that's indigenous here.
Yeah, and that comes out. And how about the oval for you?
Oh, I was doing rectangles for years, and I did some baths and pools, and then I looked at again Bonnard and his pictures of his wife in the bathtub and all of that, and so that kind of interested me, and I did a couple things like that, and then I took about a year ago I took a printmaking class of it was printmaking without a press at Fleischer, and so I don't know, I kept printing these ovals that I just kept printing the same thing over and over again, and I don't even know why, but I just was very interested in that. And then I took them all home, and of course they weren't finished anything. And then I'd look at them, I'd put them up on the wall a little bit, and I'd see something in them. And then I worked into them, and then, you know, maybe a couple weeks later, I'd pull another one out, and it's like, oh, this looks a little like something. So I just kind of worked into it. But for a brief while, all I wanted to do was make ovals, and so I did at the printmaking class, and I had these half-finished things that were, you know, I thought, oh, someday I will use these.
The interesting piece between the ovals and the rectangles is that the figures in the ovals blend into an oval position, and the figures in the rectangles are more straight.
Interesting. More rigid, too. Yeah.
What do you think?
Maybe that's true, yeah.
What do you think the oval is?
I was thinking bathtub.
I was thinking womb.
The womb.
Some
of them do look like that, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of wombs.
Maybe so. I guess I don't think so much about deep meaning when I'm doing my artwork. We were talking about that in the car. I don't have any kind of agenda or political statement or any kind of trauma that I want to express. I'm looking at color and shape and things like that. So I don't stop and think, you know, what is the origin of this shape. I just kind of intuitively like to work on it and build it into something. It doesn't have any kind of deep meaning behind it. It's the visual part of it that interests me.
Forget deep meaning, but there's definitely a sense of a vessel that's embodying a figure. Like they seem very interdependent.
They, you know, that kind of thing appeals to me, and it just grows that way. But it's not my original intent when I do it.
I get that your intent isn't social activism or isn't. And yet, in 2024, with women's reproductive rights, you know, on the fence, we have wombs with beings in them. I don't want to get too far into this, but where does politics, social activism connect? And do we as artists have to know that?
I don't know, because I feel like politics are very, very important to me, but I don't feel like I have artwork that reflects my politics. And I'm not sure I would know how to.
And Mary, too, also with the multi figures, you know, in one here, and then there's one back here, and I guess over here the blue one, and then there are mixed human beings with animal beings. In hearing Judy talk about not political, where are you in that? Political, not political, oh, it just happens?
I think what you said about being a, what you call that, not filter, but a channeling, that's kind of what I'm doing. You know, I do, I consider the ones with all the figures intertwined with the animals. You know, I could say, well, it's how we are all connected, but I don't think about that when I'm doing it. I just love making these figures and then digging them out and figuring out how they all connect, which they do, but I'm not thinking, oh, we're all connected. I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking about how they do it. And again, I'm just like channeling. It feels like I'm 6 years old and I'm making stuff that I used to love to make, and I'm like so enthralled by, you know, the fact that I can do this is, you know, that I am physically able to, and then it's very much like channeling when I was really young and made a horse out of paper mache and found this incredible thread for its tail. I thought it was like, oh, this was the ultimate. And that's what it feels like.
And Judy, what does your process look like?
So I often will have an idea in my head, and it's usually from something that I see, a photograph or something in the room, and I start out, I think of myself as very figurative, and but it ends after, pretty soon it ends. So I have something up, and then I look at it, and then it just grows and builds up, and by the end, if people don't recognize what I originally had in mind, I don't care. You know, so it's just, I start out with something because I need something to, you know, to get started, which is why I often actually will start out with a piece of wallpaper or some textured paper. And then it just kind of evolves. And I like using transparent papers so that you can see the different layers and kind of see how it's built up.
Yeah. So Mary, how do you decide, or maybe you don't decide, but how do you decide on these figures don't have color, and this figure in blue are really colorful? How does that happen?
Glaze is what you paint on to make the color. I don't know how I decide. I guess I really would prefer that the clay is just the clay, because I love how that looks. And then like on that one, it's very minimal and judicious when I decide to use color. Because I always think if you don't do something texture or color, that it's like a wasted opportunity. So, but this show does seem like there's more color than I had the last time.
Yeah, I think I like both. Like, I love this piece. You know, and
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I don't remember. All I know is I have this piece on a photograph, right? And this one just speaks to me as it has a great expression.
She does.
And I hate to pick like a favorite, but I like Judy. I like the red one.
I want that one.
I love that one. I think that one. There's a way that the figure is swimming. There's a way that it blows the blue sky out of reality. There is no blue sky. It's red, and it could be a pool. It could be a lake. It could be an ocean. I don't know too many houses that have bathtubs that size. So
No, that's definitely the beach.
it's the beach.
And that's one of my newer ones, so I'm glad you like that. Those two are the ones that I did most recently.
What's in them that is more recent in thought, or how does the more recent?
The movement. There's a lot of movement in them, and that's kind of a direction I want to go in. And the figures are vaguer. I like the work of Catherine Bradford. I don't know if you know her work, but she does a lot of figures in pools. She does superheroes too, and she does a lot of women. And she, her figures are kind of amorphous in a way, and I feel like she has influenced my latest work. So, yeah.
And that this is predominantly about color.
She really uses color beautifully. So.
And I think that's like really her what she's trying to figure out.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Judy, looking at what I love, and you mentioned it, is sort of the transparency of these that you're talking about, layers. And I just love that. I hate to go back to childhood, but when we were making pictures with tissue paper and just layering it on top of each other, that sort of reminds me, but much better than what I could do in childhood.
Also, I feel if you do not get up really close and look at them, you kind of miss out the complexity of them. You only get the image, the room or the oval, or it's a figure in a bathroom, J. Bernard, something like that. But when you really look at them, there's incredible minutiae of different kinds of papers. So I think and I also see the love of paper and your, really capitalizing on that.
I take pictures throughout the process just because it helps me think. So yeah, it is interesting to look back and it's like, oh, it used to look like that.
The thing that most interests me about them is that notion of how the figure is set differently in those works than it is in typically in Western art. Not always like a sharp difference, but it's an overall to generalized difference where in those works it's notable that the human figures in them are usually embedded in the background. And if they're outdoors and there's something like a mountain and rivers or seas and stuff, the humans are like a fall leaf flittering by, right? They're aesthetically shown that way. And they're also embedded into the environment as part of it, opposed to a really, really stark division between the figure as
and the background.
Star, subject, with the background. Well, I think that's how these look to me. Funny, the figures in the tub, because the ukiyo-e prints, there's a lot of them where there's women bathing. I can't remember the artist in particular who did a lot of them, but and in those, the figure is typically more prominent.
Yeah, right.
And in these, they're not. And I feel like there's a difference in perspective. I feel like in those, the woman is being looked at as more objectified as a beautiful body, and they're lovely prints, and I love them. But in these, I was looking at these, and I felt like I was the person in the tub. Like it makes me think about times I've been solitary in a space that's quiet, alone. That's what these, it's like what you're doing with all these film aesthetics seems to be something where I felt like I could enter into it, rather than be like watching something where I'm separated from it, looking at it.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, that's great. I think part of that also, when I met with Judy a couple of weeks ago, is like a lot of the figures are either without a head or are faceless, so that we can, in a way, put ourselves,
the abstraction.
Right.
So, yeah.
right.
They're anonymous in a way. We were talking a while back, and we put our sculptures and drawings together like this, and that's unusual for this gallery because usually it's divided in half. And Mary said something to me that I really loved, and it was that, when we leave the gallery, she feels like our work talks to each other. And I really like that, and I feel like it's true. There's a real connection there.
Yeah, and like Yolanda said, that she thought that one of the images that Judy did was that I had done it, and I thought that was really, and Judy liked a painting that I did that was in my house. I said, oh, you just like it because it looks like yours. So I think that was a really nice thing for both of us, that we could show our work together, because it really ended up so perfect.
I said about color in Mary, because I watched Mary work because we work in the same studio, and when you were talking about color and why color is difficult for you, but you see things getting more colorful, and I wonder how much of that is, because I do know you, like I do see you working in the studio and stuff, is like what you're saying about the glaze that maybe like probably not everybody here knows is that the pieces are transformed in the kiln. So when you paint the glaze on, it doesn't look like how it's going to look after it's fired. And so there's this separation. It's very different from like from painting on a canvas or something where you immediately see, like you put it on there and you immediately see what it's going to look like. And I wonder how much you're adding of more color over time is simply because you're working all the time in a studio and you've taken risks, you've tried certain colors, certain glazes, certain underglazes, and learned from them. And it's like you're just becoming like more and more familiar, like learning what they do, and just intuitively from gathering all that information, getting more daring with it, taking more risks with it, and knowing better how to use it really effectively with this particular clay or whatever. Yeah.
I think that's true, because I took a glaze workshop last night, and like I couldn't care less about what what she was teaching us. And it's 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I'm still not done with glaze number 3. It's like, this stupid. Why am I wasting my time doing this? I'd way rather be making the foam. So I think being around everybody who uses color has probably influenced me, that I have to keep trying to do something the right way, whatever the right way is.
Do you feel like, how do you know when you're done?
I usually have it on my wall, and when I put the last piece, I think, oh, I'm done.
Done. Anything here you'd like to change?
No, I don't like to go back, and I'll just move on.
How does anybody know when their stuff is done?
How do you know when you're done? When it's done, yeah. I felt like that with my marriage.
Man, that took me way longer to figure out. No, really.
No, I get it.
With like the sculptures, it's like I worked on one yesterday, and I think it's there. But of course, I'm going to go back and fiddle with it I feel better if I fiddle for a few more days on it. I don't know why, I really don't need to, but that's my impulse always, is to make sure that I spend the right amount of time on something. Yeah, like I know that's already done, and yesterday when I did, oh, I should go back and fix this eye, or, but it's like the point is already made, and I could just stop there. And how do I know it's there? Because I look at it and I go, oh, that's it. Or it kind of speaks to me as a human, so I just know that's enough. But of course I feel bad if, oh gee, I only worked on this 5 hours, I better work on another 5 hours.
Yeah.
I was just going to add your favorite piece. It looks like it came out of an ancient culture. Like you didn't make it, you found it.
And that's exactly what happens when they know something is finished. It's like, oh, there you are. I found you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I think that's true of a lot of the ones that aren't like heavily glazed. The ones that look like, oh, they could have been found at a dig, right? I don't know why I think that there wasn't color, 4,000 years ago, but it wore off, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But there's a way that, when I look at this one, I go, yeah, I can imagine someone finding it in the ground or in a vessel somehow.
Well, Judy, the one behind you of the school club, I find that very interesting because they're figures on water, but you've zoomed way out. And the shells, the skulls almost look like fish bones.
They do look like
It still
fish
looks
bones.
like something in water, but they're figures and just from a distance.
Yeah, that was, again, an experiment with the monoprints. And then I decided I wanted the city behind it, and so I used a map. I don't know if you can see that. And so it's kind of a map of the city, and it's supposed to represent the city behind it. But yeah, that was an experiment on very, very thin paper with the monotype.
Now, and I don't know timing, but there's a way that this one looks like, it's at the end and it's the transitional one, right? There's a way that it has the rectangles in it and has the curves in it, right? And even this curved is a little rectangular-ish, So it feels like the
The transition piece.
the transition
funny.
piece, right?
It also looks like a boat if you like to go next to it.
It can be a boat, yeah.
I put them next to each other because of the transparency and the color.
In defense of color in the ceramics, I felt that, I had seen Mary's first attempts, or early attempts, at putting a lot of different figures together in a group. And when I saw what she did with it in the show, I was very, very impressed because to me, when they were just the clay, it was very hard to read it, to figure out what was happening there. But when she used color, like in the one there, I think it had a seahorse in it. First of all, I think it's under glazed paints. It's not glazed, and it's not shiny. So it doesn't really interfere, for me, with the clay body, the same way that glaze does. So it still holds some of what it had before. But the color, besides its imagination, also helps when you look at it to know what you're seeing and to be able to look at the whole thing at one time, find all the relationships. It just clarifies the whole thing. And that was very exciting to me when I first saw it. And then another thing, I would say that what she's doing here with the color and what she's doing in the large lady up there, there she's using it and it's emphasizing what that form is. But when she does it here, it reminds me, it's more like what people do when they put tattoos on their bodies, And it doesn't give you, it doesn't help to give you the form, but it gives you two things going against each other, sort of, you know? You're seeing one thing, you're seeing another, sort of like contrast or something like that happening here. And I love that. So I don't think that it's for nothing, the color. Even though I understand it, sometimes I think just the natural material is very nice, but she does that too when it works, but it isn't always the right answer.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Doc.
you, Judy.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks for listening.